Okay. All right, folks. We begin today chapter 37. Chapter 37, in one word, ma'aseinu, our actions. Let us explain. In the previous chapter, what was the point of the previous chapter? Is nisave. God has a desire. He really wants something. What does he want? His true desire is to have a dwelling place in this low world. This low world means it's removed from him in the fact that it is concealed, the light of God, from us, not from God's point of view. God's point of view, we are a part of him, not separate from him. Before he created the world, there's nothing but him. After he creates the world, there's nothing but him. But from our point of view, as opposed to souls in Garden of Eden, in Gan Eden, that perceive a ray of light of God, experience that ray of light, we don't. So that becomes a higher world. Our world is a lower world because we don't perceive. It's concealed. But it's here that God wants, that we should make him comfortable, that we should transform darkness into light. How? By transforming me. Where I might want to sleep in, I get up and pray. Where I might want to eat, so I learn. Not that you don't eat, but you push off the eating. That's giving up something of you in order to bring the light of God into this world. So it's not about getting as much I can from this world. So some people, as much as they can from this world is material things. Greater people understand that it's spiritual things, and greater people, even that, understand that it's godly things, God. But that's all about getting things. So I could amass more, so I get a better reward ultimately. No, that's not what it's about. I mean, there is that level. Don't get me wrong. There is that truth, but that's not the truth that Tanya is trying to bring to us. That its greater truth is what God needs, not what I want to amass in this world. And that is that dwelling place for God that will ultimately become a reality in times of Mashiach, which, of course, what's going on in the world now, as we've spoken, is most definitely a part of the process to bring to Mashiach. So, we had this experience once before of where we could perceive God in this world in a physical way, not just in the mind's eye, in the spirit of our soul, but literally we had this experience. And that was at Mount Sinai when God gave the commandments. It was so powerful that our soul took flight and had to be returned to us through the power of Torah, restoratively to us. But what was the problem with God revealing in such a way that 40 days later we committed the ultimate sin of idolatry, the golden calf? The problem with that is that it came from above. God showered us, as it were, with such a divine light that was so powerful. Excuse me a second. That was so powerful that didn't integrate with me. It didn't become a part of me. It remained beyond me. And therefore, we didn't earn it. Since we didn't earn it, we lost it quickly. Just as quickly as it came, that's as quickly as it left us. What does that mean? What do you mean quickly that it came? Well, it came very quickly. God revealed himself. So much so that we saw that which is usually heard, right? And yet, that we lost it. How are we going to regain it? Well, that's today's class. Today's class teaches us the following: that in order to create that ultimate perfection, the world that we're waiting for, a world that there won't be any more greed, any more jealousy, because the light of God, the presence of God will be so palpable, so real with the physical eye, not just with our souls that we can sense it, not just with our mind's eye that we can appreciate it, but that will come how? As the Alter Rebbe says, totally calls man meshech hagolus. It is dependent on the times of exile, our actions, and our divine service. That's what it's dependent on. Excuse me just a moment. That's what it's dependent on. Therefore, it's up to you and me. So the question is, okay, our divine service is going to make or break, or it's going to make it. Just a question of when, right? Is going to create this reality that will bring the Messianic era. How does it work exactly? How do we understand that? Why? Is it, excuse me? Is that going to happen because what? Is that going to happen, the Messianic era, as like, someone that goes to work? And today, a lot of people not going to work, right? But you go to work, and because of the work that you do, you get a salary. Is the salary inherently connected to the work that you did? No, not at all. In a way, it's kind of a reward. You do this, you get that, right? A child, listens to the parents, you're going to get an ice cream. Is ice cream an connection to what they did? Cleaning up their room, now, studying, whatever it is? Not at all. That's not the case here. The case over here is the mitzvah is the cause of this outcome. We do a mitzvah. The act of that mitzvah causes the final result, which is Mashiach. What does that mean? Why does the mitzvah do that? Because when you do a mitzvah, the word mitzvah means not only command of God, but it also means the connection to God. It's a connection, meaning that when we do a mitzvah with an object of this world, and we introduce into it the light of God, that light of God that was in that object previously was under the rulership of klipa, of negativity, and now that negativity was transformed into an object of mitzvah, an object of the divine will that's expressed in this thing. For example, tefillin, phylacteries, are from a hide of a kosher animal, cow, and before it was used, that kosher cow is under the dominion of klipas noiga. Klipas noiga is an admixture of good and evil. By now using that tefillin and preparing it for fulfillment of a divine commandment, or for another example, an esrog, the citron fruit that we use in the holiday of Sukkot, or for that matter, a coin that we give charity with. So think about it for a moment. Before we used those objects, they were under the dominion of klipa, of a shell that's covering over on the light of God. Not completely, because they're permissible objects. However, when they became mitzvah objects, right, then all of the negativity that was within them, the klipa, is no longer existing, no longer a reality. It becomes now complete of kedusha, of God's holiness, imbues it entirely. And it becomes a mitzvah object. There's no concealment of the light of God, no separation in this object from God. When it was purely a coin, it could be used for anything, right? When it was purely a piece of leather, it could be used for anything. But when it became the mitzvah object, now it is embodiment of the divine will. And therefore it's been transformed into holiness. Likewise, the observer of that mitzvah, putting on the tefillin, making the blessing on the esrog, extending your hand and giving the charity. Not only is the physical object now a mitzvah object, but the individual who engages in the mitzvah, the animal soul, and this is something we spoke about in the previous chapter, the animal soul and the body are likewise engaged and are absorbed in the divine light of God. So, for example, by reciting the Shema prayer, the animal soul is elevated into holiness. Even though when you're saying the Shema Yisrael, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, which is a divine commandment to fulfill, once in the morning, once in the evening, to say it. And very important mitzvah, we shall make sure we do. That even though all I'm doing is speaking words, it's not even an action. But as the sages teach us in the Talmud, that the movement of our lips is also considered an action. And how do I move my lips? Now, studying Torah, likewise, how do I move my lips? My lips are a physical body. They're animated by my animal soul, not by my godly soul. But my godly soul only inspires me to say the Shema, to learn Torah, to say words of Torah. But the actual movement of those lips in prayer, in the Shema, or in study of Torah, is actually vitalized by my animal soul, as something that we spoke about at great length previously. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe concludes in today's class, the more you put your vital soul into your body's engagement in the mitzvah, the more it becomes, the more passion you have, the more you've transformed the negativity of the animal soul into something positive. You've converting the energy of the animal soul that's now engaged in that learning of Torah in a more passionate way. You've introduced greater light, because you've now used your animal soul and your body to be part and absorbed in the divine light of God, which the Alter Rebbe says, interestingly, that with this we can understand the idea that when you're fully engaged, your animal soul, that gives the vitality to your body, that your body's fully engaged, whether it's in a prayer or whether it's in study of Torah. Well, in particular, in the study of Torah, in this, you won't forget something. You won't forget what you learn. Where does forgetfulness come from? It comes from klipa. It comes from the klipa of the body, the shell on the body, because it's covering over. Forgetfulness, what was forgetfulness? You experience something, but it's now covered over. Klipa is the covering. Because the klipa of the body covers over, so you forget something. But when you apply your prayer and Torah study with vigor, engaging your animal soul that gives vitality to your body in a vigorous manner with strength, then that will help us not to forget. Not to forget, because we're truly engaged. And from the point of view of the godly soul, there's nothing to forget. So once you've got the animal soul on side, vigorously engaged, then one doesn't forget. Just to show us that, because we do forget, because it wasn't so, and I can speak for myself, I won't speak for anybody else. I mean, maybe people have photographic memories, but I definitely don't. But those things that, and as the old saying goes, those things are important to you. You remember. Why do you remember it? Because there's, here the Alter Rebbe is explaining, because you're vigorously engaged in it, not just your godly soul, but your animal soul and body engaged, and therefore you don't forget, because it was a part of the experience. Powerful idea. So what do we have over here? Folks, it's up to me and you. Well, to me. I have to look at myself here teaching it, so it's up to all of us. That in our actions, our divine service throughout exile will be the catalyst to ultimately bring Mashiach. Because, as we said,